Hello there. Tonight we step onto a pirate ship where the night has frozen itself into the ropes. The deck tilts under your boots, black with old spray and silver where new ice has caught the moon. A block knocks above you with a hollow wooden clack. The wind slides under your collar as if it owns the place, which, unfortunately, it rather does. This is not the cheerful pirate life of painted tavern signs. There is no warm cabin waiting with a heroic cup of rum and a tidy little skull on the table. There is only a wet sleeve, a hard plank, a watch bell somewhere in the dark, and the strong suspicion that you probably won't survive this with your romantic feelings about sea air fully intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're watching from and what the local time is. Now, dim the lights and keep your left hand low near the rail, because the ship gives a sudden lean and your foot slides half an inch before the sole catches. Half an inch is enough to make the body pay attention. The sea has been throwing spray across the deck all evening, and now the colder air has tightened it into a glazed skin. The planks do not look dangerous in a dramatic way, they look merely wet. That is their little joke. You are not on a grand naval ship built to frighten nations. You are on a smaller pirate vessel, the kind favoured in many Atlantic raids because speed, shallow draft, and quick handling can matter more than polished size. Sloops and captured merchant craft often served pirates well in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. They could run close to coasts, chase slower prizes, and vanish where a heavier warship might curse the depth and turn away. None of that helps your toes, but it explains why the deck beneath you feels crowded with purpose rather than comfort. Every object around you has a job before it has a shape. The coils of rope are not decoration, the barrels are not scenery. The spare canvas near the mast is not waiting to become bedding just because your back has begun a quiet argument with existence. Even the bucket rolling against a cleat has probably been useful more recently than you have. A ship at night is not asleep. It is working in a lower voice. The cold changes the rigging first. Lines that moved smoothly in daylight now stiffen where salt water has dried and frozen along the fibres. Hemp rope can swell, harden, and resist the hand when wet and cold, and a line that usually runs obediently through a block may drag or jerk. One of the men forward lifts a rope and snaps it once against the deck. Ice chips scatter in a small white spray. He does it again, not angrily, just with the bored cruelty of someone waking a reluctant tool. There is something almost domestic about that sound, like beating dust from a rug, if the rug helped steer a stolen ship through a freezing sea and might kill you if it jammed at the wrong moment. History is rarely courteous enough to separate the ordinary from the deadly. Your breath leaves your mouth and disappears too quickly to admire itself. The wind takes it. The same wind works at your cuffs, your collar, the gap where one button is missing from your coat. That missing button has become a major political figure in your private life. It controls borders. It permits invasion. You press your wrist across the gap and feel the damp wool there, stiff with salt. The men around you stand in small postures of resistance, shoulders lifted, chins tucked, hands folded into armpits for a few breaths, then dragged out again when a line must be handled. A pirate crew may vote on certain matters, divide plunder by articles, and resist the brutal hierarchy of merchant or naval service, but no crew votes down the wind. The weather remains an absolute monarch. It issues orders through skin. A bell or struck metal marks time somewhere aft. The note travels along the deck, thin and cold. Ships commonly divided the night into watches, with part of the crew awake while others tried to sleep. That was not a naval luxury, it was a necessity. Sails must be tended, the helm must be kept, hazards must be seen before the hull finds them. Pirates might reject many authorities, but they could not reject the fact that a ship left unattended is just a complicated way to drown. The watch has a particular look on a frozen night. No one wastes movement. A man at the helm keeps his stance wide, knees loose, face turned away from the worst of the wind. Another peers forward, though the horizon is less a line than a dark guess. A third checks the belaying points with fingers that no longer move as quickly as pride would prefer. The ship creaks underneath all of you, and each creak passes through the soles before it becomes sound. The scholarly record, inconveniently, does not give one neat answer for how often pirates endured nights like this in the coldest waters. The evidence remains frustratingly divided over the balance between their warmer Caribbean hunting grounds and the colder Atlantic passages, northern coasts, and seasonal voyages that also shaped real maritime life. Popular memory keeps pirates under hot skies. Sailors' bodies knew better. A man who steals in the tropics may still freeze off the American coast, the North Atlantic, or any wind-raked crossing where profit, pursuit, or bad planning has carried him. You grip the rail, then regret it. The wood is slick and colder than the air. Tar, salt, and ice make a skin under your palm. The smell of the deck rises in pieces. Pitch from seams, wet rope, stale fish, old smoke from the galley, and the sour wool of men who have lived too long inside the same clothes. It is not a single foul smell. It is an inventory. Someone behind you spits over the side. Badly. The wind changes its mind and returns part of the effort to his sleeve. No one laughs loudly. A low snort passes from one man to another, then dies. At sea, comedy must be small enough not to cost warmth. The order comes to ease a line. Not shouted. Passed. The man nearest you repeats it, and the words move like a coal handed through darkness. You put your hands where you are told. The rope feels hard, fibrous, and wet through the roughness. When you pull, the line resists, then gives with a scrape that seems to run through your teeth. Your feet search for grip. The ship rises. The deck slides away from certainty. This is the first thing the night teaches about pirate sleep. It does not begin in a bed. It begins with the failure to be excused from the ship. You may be tired enough to sleep standing, but the vessel has claims on you first. Every man who later curls under a blanket, canvas scrap, hammock, or stolen coat has had to earn that small collapse by staying useful a little longer than his body prefers. A cold fleck of spray hits your cheek. Another finds the corner of your mouth. The taste is salt and iron and something wooden from the cup you drank from earlier. Your lips have begun to split. You run your tongue across them once and stop, because that makes it worse. The body keeps offering solutions it has not properly tested. The line is made fast. The man beside you slaps his hands against his coat, once, twice, then folds them under his arms. His cap is pulled so low that his eyebrows have become theoretical. He looks toward the hatch, where the darker square below promises not warmth exactly, but a less public kind of misery. Men who are off watch have already started glancing that way. Not all at once, that would look too eager. One shifts his weight. Another lifts a bundle of cloth from beside a chest. A third checks whether the coil of rope near the companionway has been claimed. Below deck there may be hammocks, there may be planks, there may be another man's boots exactly where your ribs would like to be. There may be air thick enough to chew and damp enough to regret. Still, it is away from the wind. At this hour, that makes it sound almost elegant. The watch stays above. The rest of you begin to peel from the deck in ones and twos, carrying the cold down in your sleeves. Your feet move carefully over the glazed boards. Your hand finds the hatch frame. Behind you, the rigging gives another sharp little clack as ice breaks loose from a line, and the night continues working without any interest in whether you find a place to lie down. The hatch frame is slick under your hand, and the first step down gives you the usual shipboard choice between caution and humiliation. You choose caution, mostly. Your boot finds the ladder rung, slips a little, catches, and sends a cold bite up through your shin. Behind you, the deck wind presses once more at your back, as if trying to come below and inspect the accommodations. The air changes halfway down. It is not warm. Warm would be a lie too large for this compartment. It is simply air that has already been used by men, wool, bilge, rope, wood, and old breath. It wraps around your face with damp familiarity. The wind above is clean and cruel. The air below is dirty and possessive. You duck your head under a beam and step into the dim, low space where sleep is being negotiated by inches. No one has prepared a bed for you. No one has prepared a bed for almost anyone. A ship like this spends its best space on sailing, fighting, storing, repairing, eating badly, and not sinking. Sleep receives what is left after those larger ambitions have finished eating. Hammocks hang where they can, slung from beams or hooks, some taut, some sagging, some already occupied by shapes that might be men, or bundled laundry with grudges. Under them lie chests, coils of line, folded sailcloth, spare spars, barrels, buckets, and bodies, trying to become smaller than nature intended. Hammocks are the obvious prize. Sailors in the age of sail commonly used hammocks because they saved space and moved with the ship instead of fighting every roll like a fixed bed. They could be stowed during the day and slung again at night, which made them practical aboard crowded vessels. Practical does not mean graceful. A hammock is a clever device that waits patiently for you to enter it badly. One man is already inside his, wrapped deep, only his cap and nose visible. The cloth has curled around him in a narrow trough. He has solved several problems at once. He is off the wet boards, out of the walking path, and wrapped in his own little hanging claim. He is also suspended beneath a beam low enough that if he sits up suddenly, his skull will learn carpentry. Every advantage at sea includes a clause. You look for an empty hammock and find only the spaces between them. That is different. A gap wide enough for a shoulder is not a bed. A shadow beneath a swinging foot is not a bed. The floor under a hammock might serve if the man above is not restless, generous with crumbs, or too badly balanced. The owner of the nearest hammock has one arm dangling over the side, fingers twitching in sleep. Those fingers are directly above the place your face would be. You continue the search. Specialists still hesitate over whether pirate ships carried hammocks in the same regular numbers as naval or merchant vessels, because pirate crews varied wildly by ship, prize-taking, crowding, and circumstance. Many pirates had learned seamanship aboard merchantmen or warships, so the practice would have been familiar, but a captured sloop packed with extra men, stolen goods, and temporary prisoners does not suddenly become a tidy floating dormitory because maritime custom approves. The real answer is in the beams, the hooks, the cloth available, and the number of cold men looking up at the same empty space. The boards offer several bad proposals. A strip beside a barrel looks sheltered until the ship rolls and a thin run of water slides along the seam there. A space near the hatch has cleaner air, but catches every draught from above. A darker corner toward the side is out of traffic, but it smells of damp rope and the bilge below, and something there has already claimed it, perhaps a bundle, perhaps a man, perhaps both. You do not investigate with your hand. That is how history teaches caution. A coil of rope sits near the companionway, thick, tarred, and raised from the planks. It is too hard to be comfortable and too useful to be ignored. Coiled line has served sailors as a temporary seat, backrest, pillow, boundary marker, and miserable mattress for as long as tired men have been willing to lower their standards. This particular coil is stiff with cold. Its outer turns have a crust of salt. When you press 2 fingers against it, the rope does not yield, so much as remember that yielding is an option. Still, it is above the wet boards. That matters. A man already lies with his hip against the far side of it, one knee drawn up, one hand tucked inside his coat. He opens one eye. The eye does not threaten, it measures. You point, barely, to the other side of the coil. He considers the request with the gravity of a magistrate deciding a land dispute of 6 inches. Then he closes the eye. Permission or exhaustion? At sea the two may look alike. You lower yourself carefully, keeping your bundle tight under one arm. The rope presses through your coat at once. A ridge finds your ribs, another catches the side of your thigh. You shift, and the man on the other side makes a small sound without opening his eye. The sound says, "Do not be a problem." You stop shifting. The coil becomes your neighbour, pillow, wall, and punishment. Across the compartment, a sailor has claimed the top of a sea chest. This is bold and probably unfair. A chest is not only storage, it is a private island, a memory box, a bank, a tool locker, and sometimes a fortress. It may hold shirts, spare stockings, tobacco, a cup, sewing gear, a knife, bits of plunder, a keepsake, a letter, or nothing at all except the owner's belief that nobody else should touch it. The chest sleeper has folded a coat beneath his head and hooked one ankle through the handle. If anyone tries to move him, they must bring the chest too. There is strategy in that. A lesser-known shipboard trick appears near your feet. A young hand has wedged himself between two lashed barrels and tucked a short board over his legs like a lid. Not fully over him, just enough to keep passing boots from landing on his shins. It looks absurd. It also works. On a crowded ship, the best sleeping place is often not the softest place, but the one that protects you from other people's feet. Human civilization may be measured in part by how often a sleeping man is stepped on. The deck under you tilts. Bodies answer without waking properly. A shoulder tightens. A foot withdraws. Someone's cup rolls, taps a chest, and stops against a bundle of sailcloth. The hammock nearest you swings gently, and the dangling hand brushes the air above your cap. You lean a fraction away from it. The rope ridge leans back into your hip. There is no neutral position. There are only different complaints waiting their turn. Below deck, space has rules nobody writes down, because everyone has already paid for breaking them. Do not block the path to the hatch. Do not lie where a working line must run. Do not put your head where a chest lid opens. Do not stretch your legs into another man's claim unless you enjoy being folded. Do not leave a bundle loose if you expect to see the same bundle later. Do not assume a dark empty patch is empty. It may contain water, vermin, someone's hand, or authority. The man beside the rope coil pulls his coat tighter and turns his face away. His shoulder nearly touches yours. Neither of you moves. Contact is unpleasant, but it blocks air. The ship has a talent for making privacy and warmth enemies. You can have a little distance and more cold, or less cold and another man's elbow. The elbow wins. A thud above tells you the watch is still working the deck. A faint sprinkle of ice, shaken loose somewhere near the hatch, scatters down and melts into nothing on the steps. You tuck your chin into your collar. Your knees bend toward your chest. One hand grips your bundle. The other slides beneath your cheek, though your sleeve is still stiff with salt from the deck. Sleep has not arrived. It is only standing nearby, looking doubtful. The rope coil presses. The boards breathe damp through your coat. The hammock above creaks with each roll, and the dangling hand sways once, twice, then hangs still. Around you, the ship fills every spare space with a man, an object, a smell, or a rule, and your claimed piece of night is exactly wide enough for your body, if your body agrees to be badly arranged. Your body agrees for perhaps 3 breaths, then begins filing objections. The rope ridge under your thigh grows sharper. The hand beneath your cheek loses feeling. The dangling fingers from the hammock above make one slow pass through the air again, as if their owner is blessing you in his sleep, or accusing you. You pull your cap lower and turn your face into your own sleeve. The sleeve smells of salt, tar, and the day's labour. It is not pleasant. It is yours. That gives it a certain authority. Nobody undresses properly in this cold. A few men loosen belts or shift a collar. One pulls off a wet outer jacket, regrets it almost at once, and drags it back over his shoulders with the defeated motion of someone returning to a bad argument. Clothing is warmth first, modesty second, property third, and comfort somewhere far behind, probably asleep in a port you have not seen for weeks. You lie in the same layers you worked in. Linen shirt against the skin, damp at the back. Woolen waistcoat stiff where spray dried into salt. Coat patched at one elbow and pulled tight across the ribs. Breeches that pinch behind the knee. Stockings that may once have had a hopeful relationship with dryness. Shoes still on, because taking them off below deck is a gamble with several unpleasant prizes. They may be stolen. They may be soaked. They may be needed suddenly. Worst of all, You may have to put them back on cold. Wool matters most. Sailors relied heavily on wool garments because wool can retain some warmth even when damp, far better than linen alone. It is not magic, it does not make wet clothing comfortable, but it gives the body a margin, and margins are everything aboard a frozen ship. The man beside you has wrapped the skirt of his coat around one knee, trapping heat by instinct rather than elegance. His other knee is exposed to the draught and appears to be losing the debate. A missing button at your chest makes itself known again. The gap opens when you curl. Cold air enters exactly there, as if it has studied your clothing and prepared a report. You press your forearm across it. This helps until your arm aches. Then you move the arm, the gap opens, and the cold resumes its official duties. Small repairs decide large portions of the night. A torn cuff lets wind into the sleeve. A loose seam rubs the neck raw. A stocking hole turns a toe into a private tragedy. Sailors often mended their own clothes, using needles, thread, patches, old cloth, sail scraps, or whatever could be spared. A man who can sew without making a fist of the fabric is not just tidy, he is safer, he is warmer. He is slightly less ridiculous when the weather tests him. The man who regretted removing his jacket now tries a more careful adjustment. He does not take the coat off. He reaches inside it, pulls a fold of shirt down at the back, tucks one edge into his breeches, and smooths the waistcoat over it with short, irritated pats. There is skill in that. Not grand skill, not the sort sung in a tavern, but the kind that keeps a draft from running along the spine. You respect it immediately, and resent him for thinking of it first. The sources suggest pirates seized clothing eagerly from prizes. Shirts, coats, hats, shoes, stockings, belts, and finer garments that could be worn, traded, or sold. Clothing was portable wealth. A good coat could be plunder, disguise, status, warmth, or bait for envy. Yet the famous flamboyant pirate image, with theatrical sashes and gleaming finery, is harder to pin down as daily shipboard reality. Scholars continue to disagree about how far such images reflect actual pirate dress, and how far they come from later prints, stage traditions, and the safer imagination of people ashore. Down here, a splendid sash would mostly be another thing to keep dry, and good luck with that. There are still traces of vanity, of course there are. Cold does not abolish human nonsense. A man near the chest has a captured scarf wrapped around his neck, a fine striped thing too handsome for the rest of him. He has tucked the bright part inward to protect it from grime, while letting the duller edge take the weather. This is practical vanity, the most durable kind. Another has brass buttons on a coat so battered that the buttons seem embarrassed by the address. In the lantern's poor light they catch a little glow, then vanish as he turns. Your own clothing is less proud. One cuff has gone hard, the other is damp. The left sleeve carries a smear of pitch from the rail. A little ridge of salt has formed where the fabric creased at the elbow. When you bend the arm, the cloth crackles softly. Not loud enough for anyone else to care. Loud enough for you. A private weather report from your own sleeve. A strange little habit appears across the cramped floor. One older sailor has stuffed a strip of rag between his collar and neck, not tied like a scarf, just wedged there to block the draft. The rag may once have been part of a shirt. It may once have cleaned a cup. It may have a past better left unexamined. Tonight it is architecture. It closes a gap. That is enough. You find a loose fold at the hem of your own shirt and try to pull it higher toward your throat, but the coat pins it. You tug once. The rope coil jabs your ribs. The man beside you exhales through his nose. You stop. Your belt stays fastened. The knife at your side presses into your hip when you turn, and the buckle sits badly against your stomach. You might loosen it, but the belt holds more than your clothes. It holds a small pouch, a bit of cord, perhaps a clasp knife, perhaps the only coin or token not yet lost to dice, drink, or official division. Shipboard sleep is not innocent. Property sleeps with you, or disappears into the dark with excellent legs. The shoes are worst after the cuff. Leather stiffens when wet and cold, and the shape it chooses is not the shape of your foot. Your toes are cramped. The sole under the left foot has taken in damp near the edge, and each time the ship rolls, the cold spot presses upward. You flex the toes inside the shoe. They answer slowly. At least they answer. That counts as comfort if the definition is tired enough. A younger man tries to remove one shoe without sitting up. This is ambitious in a space where ambition meets beams, elbows, and judgment. He hooks a finger into the heel, pulls, and nearly kicks the sleeper opposite him in the chin. The sleeper opens both eyes. The shoe remains on. The young man places his foot back exactly where it was, and looks as if this had been his plan from the beginning. No one comments. Silence can be merciful when everyone has made the same mistake in another form. The deck above thumps once. A draft slides down the hatch and moves across the compartment at ankle height. Every loose edge of clothing becomes important. Coat skirts are pulled in, blanket corners are tucked, caps are lowered, sleeves swallow hands. The ship has no patience for exposed wrists. You draw your knees tighter and trap your hands between them for warmth. The position makes the knife press harder into your side. You shift it half an inch. Better, then worse, then acceptable. That is how the night sorts most things. Your clothes are not separate from the ship now. They hold the salt of the deck, the pitch of the rail, the damp of the hatch, the smell of the hold, the pressure of the rope, and the small failures of every seam. You do not take the day off to sleep. You sleep inside it, buttoned badly, belted too tight, capped too low, shoes biting, sleeve under your cheek, while the cold waits at every opening and the cloth does what it can. The cloth does what it can, and then it asks for help. That help is supposed to come from blankets, if a man owns one, has borrowed one, has stolen one quietly enough, or has slept near someone too tired to defend the edge. You have no such magnificent certainty. You have a folded piece of canvas beneath one arm, a coat that has lost the argument at the collar, and the rope coil continuing its slow campaign against your hip. Across from you, the man on the chest has a wool blanket tucked under his chin. One hand stays clamped on the top edge. He is asleep only in the most technical sense. His mouth hangs open, his breathing is deep, but the hand remains awake. It grips the blanket with a steady, private intelligence. Cold makes ownership visible. In warm weather, a man may speak generously. On a frozen night, generosity is measured in inches of cloth. Blankets aboard a pirate ship can arrive by many routes. Some are brought by sailors from earlier service. Some come from captured merchant vessels, passenger trunks, naval stores, coastal raids, or cargo meant for people who expected a much more lawful delivery. Pirates are often remembered for gold and silver, but ordinary useful goods mattered enormously. Clothing, bedding, shoes, tools, medicine, food, canvas, and rope. A blanket may not glitter, but it can keep a tired man from shaking himself useless before dawn. Your canvas has been cut from older sail or spare cloth. It still remembers wind more than bodies. The weave is dense and stiff, with a tarred patch near one corner and a line of old stitching that scratches when it rubs your jaw. You pull it over your knees. The canvas does not drape, it stands in angles. It makes a little tent over one shin and leaves the other offended. Still, it blocks a draft, and blocking is sometimes enough. A hand appears from beneath the hammock above, not the dangling hand from before, another one, lower, moving with intention. It reaches toward a blanket corner hanging from the chest sleeper's side. The movement is slow enough to claim innocence if caught. The fingers pinch wool. Pull once. Pause. Pull again. The chest sleeper's gripping hand tightens. The stealing hand freezes. For 3 breaths nothing happens. The ship creaks, the lantern chain ticks, the blanket corner remains between 2 legal systems. Then the chest sleeper, without opening his eyes, rolls the edge inward under his chin. The stealing hand retreats into darkness, with a dignity it has not earned. No one speaks. That is the real judgment. The division of plunder on many pirate ships followed written or spoken articles, with shares assigned by roll and sometimes compensation promised for wounds. This is one of the more striking facts about pirate society. It could be criminal, and yet internally regulated. But practical goods like blankets create troublesome moments. A bale of cloth can be counted. A blanket already wrapped around a freezing man becomes harder to classify. Company property, private claim, urgent need, theft. Fairness and "I had it first" all crowd under the same strip of wool. Academic opinion still shifts around the problem of how small useful loot was handled once it crossed from captured cargo into daily use. Some crews seem to have maintained careful systems. Others likely blurred rules when weather, drink, hunger, or opportunity pressed hard enough. The trial records and hostile accounts do not always preserve the quiet negotiations over a blanket edge at midnight. They preserve the crimes people came to court for. They do not always preserve the cold. The man beside you has no blanket either. He has turned his coat around so the thicker back covers his chest, leaving the front open beneath him. It looks uncomfortable and clever. He notices you looking and gives the smallest shrug, as if to say the coat suggested it, not him. Clothing and bedding change jobs constantly below deck. A coat becomes a quilt, a sail scrap becomes a wall, a bundle becomes a pillow, a chest becomes a bed if the owner is brave or important enough. A sack becomes insulation when stuffed with rope yarn, torn cloth, or anything dry that traps a little air. Near the stern, someone has made a pillow from an old canvas bag filled with oakum, the teased fibres used for caulking seams. It smells strongly of tar. Resting your head on it must be like sleeping with your face pressed to the ship's repair work. And yet his breathing has deepened. The pillow is lumpy, dark, probably dirty, and successful. That is more than can be said for many elegant objects ashore. A second blanket is being shared 2 men away. Shared is perhaps too sweet a word. The 2 bodies lie back to back under it, each holding a different edge, each pretending not to know that if one rolls, the other loses a shoulder. Their feet do not align. One man's boots stick out, the other has stockings only, and he has drawn his knees up so far that the blanket makes a peaked shape over him. He looks less like a sleeping pirate than an angry parcel. You adjust the canvas again. The tarred corner is now near your cheek, so you fold it under. The folded edge creates a hard ridge. You unfold it. The draft returns. You fold it halfway. This is what bedding becomes at sea, a series of small arguments with geometry. The lantern glow touches the underside of a hammock, the rim of a cup, the edge of the chest, the pale knuckles on the good blanket. Light does not make things warmer, but it makes claims easier to see. A blanket left loose near the foot is an invitation. A bundle not pinned under an elbow is a mistake. Even honest men become imaginative when cold enough, and this room does not specialize in honesty. You tuck your canvas under your thigh, trapping it with your own weight. The pressure numbs the leg slightly. Worth it. The ship rolls and the canvas tries to slide free anyway. You catch it with your knee. The man beside you gives a faint, approving grunt, or perhaps it is digestion. You take it as approval. Encouragement is rare down here. There is one small mercy in shared misery. A body near yours gives off heat, even if the owner has poor manners and sharp elbows. The man beside you has shifted closer by a finger's width. You have also shifted closer by a finger's width. Neither of you acknowledges the arrangement. 2 proud men may refuse to cuddle while quietly accepting the laws of temperature. The rope coil between your hips prevents anything sentimental from developing. Above, someone coughs into wool, another turns under canvas. The chest sleeper's hand finally relaxes a little, then tightens again when the ship rolls. His blanket remains his kingdom, your canvas remains your disputed province. The cold continues to enter wherever cloth lifts, but the worst of the draft has been blocked for now. For now is a powerful phrase aboard ship. It does not promise morning, it only promises this breath, this fold, this guarded edge, this poor shelter held in place by a knee going slowly numb. You lower your cheek toward your sleeve again and keep one hand closed around the canvas corner, because the night has already shown you what happens to warmth that is not defended. Warmth that is not defended disappears by theft, by draft, or by duty. Tonight, duty arrives first. A hand grips your shoulder through the coat and canvas. Not violently. Worse than violently. Efficiently. You open your eyes into the lantern's dull swing and find a face above you, red-nosed, salt-stiff, and deeply uninterested in your personal negotiations with sleep. He jerks his chin toward the hatch. For one foolish moment you do not understand him. Then the bell above gives its thin metal answer. Your watch. The canvas slips from your knees as you sit up. Cold air finds the places it had been waiting to enter. Your left leg, the one pinning the canvas, prickles angrily as blood returns. The rope coil has left a hard ache along your hip. Someone beside you pulls away just enough to reclaim the heat your body leaves behind. That is not cruelty. That is maritime efficiency. You gather yourself in pieces. Cap lower, belt checked. Knife shifted away from the saw place. Shoes still on, thank heaven, or laziness. One hand reaches for the canvas, then stops. You cannot take it above unless you want it soaked, blown loose, or mocked with professional skill. You tuck it under the rope coil again, deeper this time, and press a loose turn of line over one corner. It looks intentional if no one studies it. Most property aboard survives by discouraging study. The man who woke you steps past and drops into the little hollow you have just abandoned. He does this with the speed of a man who believes in opportunity. The canvas corner is under the rope. His eye flicks toward it. Yours stays on him. A full conversation passes without words. He turns his shoulder away and folds his arms. The canvas remains where it is. For now. Ships commonly divide the day and night into watches, so some of the crew can rest while others keep the vessel alive. The exact pattern may vary, but the principle does not. Someone must steer, someone must look out, someone must answer a sail that begins to flog, a line that strains wrong, a change in wind, a light on the horizon, a coast too near, or the sudden shape of another vessel where there was supposed to be only dark. Pirates can vote on many human matters. They cannot vote the ship into managing itself. You stand too quickly and strike the low beam with the top of your cap. The cap saves your skull from the worst of it and steals whatever dignity remained. A nearby sleeper exhales a laugh into his blanket, barely more than a leak of air. You accept this as the fair price of being upright. The ladder to the deck is colder than it was when you came down. Your hand closes around the side rail. Damp wood, polished by use, slick with carried spray. The first rung asks whether your feet are awake. They are not. They come along anyway. Halfway up, the air sharpens. The smell of bodies and bilge thins behind you. Salt wind presses into your face before your head reaches the opening. Then you are back on deck. The cold takes you without introduction. It hits the wet cuff first, then the missing button, then the ankles, then the inside of your nose. The sky has changed while you tried to sleep. The moon is lower, strained through a torn patch of cloud. The rigging is black against it, with pale lines where frost has settled. The deck gleams in strips. Every step must be placed rather than taken. Sleep below was cramped, sour, and bad. The deck reminds you that bad can always be expanded. The man you relieve is at the rail, shoulders hunched, one hand tucked into the opposite sleeve. He looks at you as if you were late, though time itself made the arrangement. His beard has caught tiny beads of frozen spray. He speaks one sentence. Wind has been backing. Then he points to the line you are to mind and vanishes toward the hatch with a hunger that has nothing to do with food. The watch never feels like waiting once you are responsible for it. From below, the deck sounds like thuds, calls, and distant weather. Up here, every noise asks to be sorted. Canvas snaps because the wind has shifted, or because the sheet needs attention, or because the sail is merely being dramatic, which sails do with talent. A block knocks because the ship has rolled, or because a line is loose, or because something is wearing where it should not. Water slaps the bow. Another slap follows. Heavier. You turn your head before deciding it is ordinary. Historians still argue whether pirate crews enforced watch discipline with the same regular harshness as merchant or naval vessels, but the cold makes part of the answer simple. A man who fails the watch endangers men who may later vote, curse, steal, laugh, or sleep beside him. Whatever the formal punishment, the social punishment begins at once. Nobody wants to share a plank with the fool who let a line go wrong while dreaming of shore. Your task is modest. Stand near the assigned line, keep it from misbehaving, answer when called, and remain useful enough not to attract correction. The rope is stiff. When you grip it, the fibres scrape through the damp wool at your palm. You flex your fingers around it, then loosen them, then flex again. A hand that holds too tightly grows clumsy. A hand that holds too loosely may lose the line. The correct pressure changes with the ship's motion, and the ship does not announce each change in advance. The helmsman stands aft, braced with knees loose. He has found the narrow balance between stiffness and collapse. His face is turned partly away from the wind, but his eyes remain on the dark ahead. A lookout is forward, a hunched shape near the bow, scanning what little the night allows. On a warmer night he might complain of boredom. Tonight boredom would be an upgrade. A small, odd trick passes from the man beside you. He lifts one foot, scrapes the sole sideways against a roughened patch of deck near a cleat, then sets it down more firmly. Not stamping, scraping. He is clearing ice from the bottom before it makes him skate at the wrong moment. You copy him. The sole grates. A little crust breaks away. Your next stance holds better. Nobody praises the improvement. Praise would only embarrass the deck. The bell's last tone seems to stay in the air long after it should have died. It marks not just time, but loss. The little hollow beside the rope coil, the guarded canvas, the half-warmth under your coat, the possibility of sinking back into sleep before your body noticed. All of it remains below, already being occupied by someone else's elbows. A call moves from forward, not alarm, adjustment. You and another hand lean into the line together. The rope gives grudgingly, then runs a little. Your fingers burn with cold friction. The sail above shifts its note, from loose complaint to tighter strain. The helmsman says nothing, which is approval enough. The ship steadies by a degree. For several breaths the work itself warms you. Not pleasantly, honestly. Heat comes from muscle, not kindness. Your shoulders wake, your feet grip. Your hands stop feeling distant and begin feeling hurt, which is progress of a sort. The wind keeps working at your button gap, but now there is too much to do for you to resent it properly. Behind you, the hatch remains open for a moment as another man comes up, dragging cold breath below and bad air above. The two airs meet and exchange insults. Then the hatch darkens again. You stand with the line in your hand, the deck shining underfoot, the lookout peering into a horizon that refuses to become clear, and the sleeping ship beneath you, filled with stolen warmth you are no longer allowed to use. The stolen warmth below stays in your mind longer than it deserves. Your hand remains on the line. Your feet hold their scraped patch of deck. The wind moves across your face in flat, steady blows, and the ship keeps its dark angle through the sea. For a few minutes, the work is clear enough to keep thought away. Then the line is belayed, the sail holds, and your usefulness narrows. Cold fills the empty place. It enters first through the wet cuff. The cuff had been unpleasant below, but up here it becomes ambitious. The damp cloth tightens around your wrist and pulls heat with quiet skill. You tuck that hand beneath your other arm for 3 breaths, then take it out again, because a man who cannot use both hands on watch is only decorative, and this deck does not need decoration. A shape moves near the hatch. Someone below has pushed it open too far, perhaps to climb up, perhaps to spit, perhaps because the air underneath has grown bad enough to make the open deck seem briefly sensible. A thicker smell rises from the opening. Breath, bilge, damp wool, tar, old food, and the sourness of too many sleeping bodies stored in too little space. The clean cold above meets it and cuts through, but not before you remember the room you left behind. When your watch eases and another man takes the line, you go down with the smell already waiting for you. The ladder receives your boots with its usual lack of charm. Halfway down the air changes again. Not softer, heavier. It sits against the skin. The world below has been breathing while you were gone, and it has not improved itself. A few men have shifted into the space your body once warmed. Your canvas remains under the rope coil, but one edge has been dragged out, either by accident or by an honest man's dishonest foot. You crouch before lying down, because the room has rearranged itself. A ship below deck is never the same room twice. One sleeper has turned and taken more floor. A chest has moved a hand's width away from the wet seam. A hammock hangs lower now that its owner has sunk into real sleep. The dangling hand from earlier has vanished, but a boot has replaced it, swinging at face height with quiet menace. You pull the canvas free. The man in your hollow opens one eye. He has enjoyed your place while you were on watch, and now he considers whether history might allow him to keep it. Your expression says no. His shoulder lifts, just enough to concede, and he rolls away by the width of a plank. That leaves a strip of floor which is technically yours and practically shared with his elbow. Below deck, bad choices wait in rows. Near the hatch, the air is fresher, but the cold draft strikes the neck whenever the cover moves. Deeper in, the air is warmer, but thick enough to make breathing feel like drinking from a dirty cup. Against the hull, you gain protection from passing feet, but inherit every chill that seeps through the planks. Near the stores, you risk barrels, rats, officers, and the moral complexities of being too close to things men want. You choose the rope coil again, not because it has become kind, because it is known. Ships of the sailing age often had poor ventilation below decks, especially when bad weather forced hatches to be closed or partly covered. Air could pass through gratings, companionways, and openings, but the needs of breathing had to compete with the need to keep out water. That contest rarely ended in elegance. Fresh air brought cold and spray. Shut air brought damp, stink, and the slow heaviness of too many lungs. You lower yourself into the strip beside the coil. The boards are wetter than before, not soaked. Worse, almost. Damp enough to worry the coat. Damp enough to make the body measure every point of contact. Your hip finds the same rope ridge with the precision of an old enemy. The canvas goes across your knees, then your chest, then back to your knees because your chest needs the coat, and your knees have begun to shiver. A man near the hatch mutters that the cover should stay open. Another voice answers from deeper in the dark that he is welcome to breathe outside if he loves air so much. The first man says nothing, but he turns his face toward the opening like a plant with a grievance. The second man pulls his blanket over his nose and keeps the stale warmth for himself. Nobody entirely agrees on whether pirate crews kept their living spaces cleaner or fouler than comparable merchant ships, because the sources are patchy and often hostile. Pirates needed a working vessel, and a working vessel required pumping, cleaning, airing when possible, and some attention to rot. They were not simply drunk animals rolling in filth, however much a judge might enjoy saying so. Yet crowding, weather, fatigue, and stolen schedules could make even competent men live inside air no one would choose twice. The bilge smell rises when the ship rolls. It is low, wet, and old. Bilge water collects in the bottom of a vessel, gathering seepage and whatever else travels downward. Pumps deal with it when men work them, but smell is harder to pump. It creeps upward through boards and gaps, especially when the ship's motion stirs it. You do not smell it all at once. You become aware of it by losing the memory of cleaner air. Near your shoulder, someone has hung a small rag from a peg or loose line. It flutters whenever the hatch draft comes through. At first it seems pointless, one more dirty scrap in a room of dirty scraps. Then you notice the sleeper behind it. The rag takes the first thin strike of moving air before it reaches his face. Not much. Enough. It is a curtain reduced to its last surviving idea. The man sleeps with his nose almost touching his sleeve, protected by 6 inches of cloth and smug engineering. You dislike him for the cleverness, then immediately search your own clothing for a spare scrap. There is none. You consider the canvas edge, too large, too valuable, too likely to be taken if you hang it. So you settle for turning your cap slightly, bringing the lower edge across one ear. It blocks the draft badly, which is still better than nobly freezing the ear. The lantern near the centre gives off a small, guarded light. Around it, the air looks thicker, as if the flame has made the damp visible. Men lie in layers of gloom, shoulders, caps, blanket humps, bent knees, a pale hand, the dark mouth of a cup. A wooden bowl sits beside a chest with something dried along its rim. Peas, perhaps, or old grease. The smell of it appears only when your face turns that way. Then it disappears under bilge again. A rat works somewhere behind the barrels. Not boldly, professionally. A tiny scrape, pause, scrape. Nobody moves. Either everyone is too tired, or the rat is currently less annoying than the draft. Ships often carried rats and mice in stores, and men fought them with traps, cats when possible, secured food, and profanity. Tonight the rat is part of the crew in the worst sense. Unwanted, persistent, and better rested than you. Your breath warms the space under the canvas, but it also dampens it. When you tuck your chin down, the cloth near your mouth grows wet. When you turn away, the draft finds your cheek. You try 3 positions and keep the 4th only because it is the one you are in when your body refuses further experiments. That is how many arrangements become tradition. The room presses close. The hatch draft, the bilge, the damp boards, the rag curtain, the rat, the sleeping elbow beside you, the lantern that shows too much and warms too little. All of it gathers into the cramped bargain below deck. The air is bad, but it has one virtue. It holds a little heat stolen from every body in it. You lie still enough not to lose your claim, breathe shallow enough not to taste everything at once, and let the stale warmth slow the shaking in your knees. The shaking slows in the stale warmth, and for a while the room becomes less a place than a weight. It lies on your face. It fills the folds of your coat. It settles under the canvas where your knees have made a small tent of sour air. The body accepts this bargain before the mind does. Warmth is warmth, even when it smells like bilge, wool, and a rat with seniority. Then a stopper comes loose in the dark. The sound is small, a damp little pop, followed by the faint scrape of a bottle against wood. But every half-awake man within reach knows it. Rum has entered the conversation, and rum does not need a lantern to be recognised. Its smell crosses the compartment in a sweet, harsh ribbon, cutting through the bad air with the confidence of a guest who has not been invited, but brought news. The bottle passes first to the man who argued for the hatch. He drinks with his face still turned toward the draft, as if trying to combine all available theories of survival. The swallow makes him cough once. Not the sick cough from earlier, a more offended one. He wipes his mouth with the back of his hand and passes the bottle along. Rum is one of the great Atlantic facts of this world. It comes from sugar, from plantations, from trade routes, from violence on land that follows men out to sea in barrels and bottles. By the late 17th and early 18th centuries, rum is common in maritime life across the Caribbean and Atlantic. Sailors drink it, trade it, steal it, ration it, celebrate with it, and blame it when memory becomes inconvenient. Pirates do not invent the bottle. They inherit it from the same ocean economy they rob. The bottle reaches you colder than it ought to be. That seems like fraud. A vessel promising warmth should not feel like it has been stored in the heart of a fish. You take it anyway. The neck touches your cracked lower lip. The sting arrives before the taste. Then the rum burns over the tongue, down the throat and into the chest with quick, showy confidence. For several breaths, it works. Or it appears to. A warm line opens behind the breastbone. The shoulders loosen. The rope ridge under your hip becomes less prosecutorial. The stale air grows less hostile, almost comic. Someone nearby says something about a captain who once claimed he could smell a Spanish prize before dawn, though what he mostly smelled was his own coat. A few men give low, careful laughs. The sound does not rise high enough to wake anger. It stays tucked under blankets. Alcohol gives a convincing performance in cold weather, but the body is not always helped by a good performance. It can make the skin feel warmer while encouraging heat to move outward, away from the core, and it can soften judgment exactly when judgment is already wearing thin. You would not explain it that way in this room. You only know the first warmth is bright and shallow. It does not reach the toes. It does not dry the cuff. It does not make the boards less damp. It mostly persuades the part of you that complains to lower its voice. Researchers are still split on the question of how tightly pirate crews controlled drink aboard ship, especially when a prize yielded more alcohol than discipline was prepared to supervise. Some accounts dwell on excess, sometimes with moral outrage sharpened for courtrooms and pamphlets. Other moments suggest rationing, practical restraint, or at least the cold arithmetic of not wasting stores before the next landfall. A pirate crew can be reckless and still understand that an empty barrel cannot be drunk twice. The bottle pauses 2 bodies away. A hand holds it too long. Another hand reaches for it. The first hand does not release. The room, which had begun to soften, firms again around the little object. Drink changes temperature, mood, ownership, courage, and foolishness. It is too useful to be casual. The old sailor beside you speaks without opening his eyes. Pass it. That is all. The bottle moves. No one argues with the voice of a man who has survived enough nights to sound bored by conflict. The hand that held the bottle lets go with a slight delay, as if preserving dignity by fractions. The old sailor takes 1 swallow, no more, then passes it away from himself instead of back toward greed. That small act is not kindness exactly. It is management. He knows a quarrel over rum is even colder than no rum. The warmth in your chest thins. It leaves the ribs first. Your fingers remain cramped in your sleeves. Your toes remain dull inside the shoes. Rum is poor at extremities. It prefers storytelling, singing, bad wagers, sudden declarations of friendship, and the kind of courage that later needs explaining. Tonight there is no room for singing. The deck above would hear it. The watch below would hate it. The cold itself would probably object. Hunger arrives after the drink, as if the rum has opened a door and found it waiting. Your stomach tightens once, then settles into a hollow awareness. Earlier food returns as memory. Ship's biscuit hard enough to make teeth negotiate, salted meat, peas, maybe a scrap of cheese if fortune had been feeling theatrical. Common sailors often lived on durable provisions because fresh food spoiled quickly at sea. Pirates might feast after a capture, but between prizes they faced the same hard stores, fouled water, and miserable calculations as other mariners. Your fingers find a crumb in your pocket. It is not a treasure. It is smaller than fairness. Still, you pinch it out carefully and place it on your tongue. The biscuit softens slowly. It tastes of flour, salt, pocket lint, and the faint suspicion that it has met a weevil socially. Ship's biscuit was famous for its hardness and for unwanted inhabitants, and sailors sometimes knocked it or broke it to clear out insects before eating. Tonight you lack the energy for inspection. If anything is in there, it has endured the same voyage and may as well contribute. The crumb gives your mouth work to do. That helps more than it should. Chewing, even badly, tells the body that the world still contains arrangements other than freezing and waiting. The rum bottle travels on. Someone drinks too deeply and exhales through his teeth. Someone else calls him a hog in a whisper soft enough to avoid becoming a fight. The hog accepts the title with silence. A second warmth spreads now, not from the rum, but from bodies shifting closer after it. The bottle has drawn men into a brief circuit. Shoulders lean, knees touch, a hand crosses the dark. For half a minute the compartment becomes a low, human machine for passing heat, liquor, irritation, and breath. Then the circuit breaks. Each man returns to his guarded fold of cloth. You decline when the bottle comes again. This surprises the man holding it. He looks at you as if refusing drink in this weather might be a sign of either wisdom or secret illness. You give the smallest shake of your head. The first swallow has told you what it can do. A second may tell you lies more loudly. He shrugs and drinks your portion with admirable willingness. The room grows heavier again. Rum has not removed the cold, It has blurred the edges. The lantern seems lower. The rat behind the barrels resumes its work. The sick man near the forward side mutters in sleep. Your wet cuff touches your wrist, and for once the cold there feels distant, as if it belongs to an account you will pay later. Fatigue begins to press from inside now, not merely from the room. It pulls at the back of the eyes. It softens the spine. It makes the rope coil less like an enemy and more like a badly shaped fact. The body, betrayed by drink and hunger and work, decides that almost any position may become sleep if defended stubbornly enough. Above, a foot crosses the deck. The watch continues in the wind you have escaped. Someone up there is staring into black water with cold hands, while you hold a fading warmth in your chest and a pocket's worth of biscuit dust on your tongue. The thought should make you grateful. It mostly makes you tired. The bottle is stopped and hidden. Cloth folds over it. A man pats the place once, as if settling a child with poor habits. The air closes around the last smell of rum. Your head lowers toward your sleeve. The warmth is false, yes, but even false warmth leaves a trace for the body to follow, and your body follows it downward, through bad air, guarded cloth, and the slow dark under the deck. The slow dark under the deck is almost enough. Almost. Your head dips, rises once, then settles lower. The sleeve beneath your cheek has warmed from your own breath. The rope coil has stopped feeling sharp because the body has begun hiding reports from the mind. Around you, men sink by degrees into whatever sleep will take them. Then the lantern gives a small twitch. Not much. A flicker. A brief, bright lick against the horn pane. Then the glow steadies again. Your eyes open before your thoughts do. Several other eyes open too. The room does not move, but attention moves through it, quick and silent. Fire is the one comfort no one can fully relax around. The flame is tiny, guarded, and useful. It hangs in its lantern like a prisoner whose escape would ruin everyone. A little light helps men avoid stepping on faces, find a cup, check a knot, see a wet run along the boards, or decide whether the shape near a barrel is gear, rat, or boot. Yet the ship around that flame is made of timber, rope, canvas, tar, pitch, oakum, cloth, and powder stored where it must be protected with almost religious seriousness. A wooden vessel carries the things fire loves most, and then asks men to sleep beside them. A fine arrangement, clearly designed by someone with confidence in other people's caution. Ships in the age of sail treated flame as a serious hazard. Cooking fires belonged in controlled hearths or galley arrangements. Lanterns were shielded, candles and pipes were watched. Gunpowder had to be kept away from sparks. Even aboard pirate vessels, where discipline could be rougher and more improvised, the danger remained plain. Fire at sea is not like fire ashore. There is no running into the street. The street is water, and it has its own objections. You want heat anyway. The wanting is physical before it is foolish. Your hands imagine it. Your wet cuff imagines it. Your toes inside stiff leather imagine a little pan of coals, a galley ember, a heated stone, any small red centre held close enough to matter. The body is not very interested in maritime safety regulations when its fingers ache. It votes for warmth with terrible judgment. A man near the lantern has edged one hand toward it, not close to the flame, only nearer the metal guard, where some memory of heat might live. The man responsible for the light opens one eye from his blanket and watches. The hand stops. The light has a keeper, and the keeper is not asleep enough to be generous. Warmth, like blankets and dry space, has territory. The surviving evidence refuses to settle the question of how often pirate crews risked small warming pans, braziers, or improvised heat below deck in extreme cold. Naval and merchant records tell us more about rules and controlled spaces than about every desperate exception. Pirate accounts are fewer, patchier, and often written by enemies, officials, or men trying to survive prosecution. The safest answer is also the least satisfying. Sometimes men surely improvised. Sometimes they were restrained, and sometimes the ship itself punished the difference. A coal would help. A coal, could also end the night in a way no one wants to explain. The lantern's horn pane clouds the light, turning it yellow and thick. Horn was sometimes used in lanterns because thin, scraped horn could protect a flame and resist breaking better than glass in rough conditions. It does not make a beautiful light. It makes the room look as though seen through weak broth. But beauty is a land concern. Here the pane keeps the flame where it belongs, and that is enough to make it precious. The flame flickers again because the hatch moves. A draught slips down and crosses the room. Men curse it without words. Shoulders rise, cloth edges tighten, one cap is pulled nearly over a nose. The flame leans inside its cage, straightens, leans again. The man by the lantern lifts a hand and turns the lantern slightly away from the draught. Not much, just enough. A practiced movement, small and calm. That calm teaches more than a shouted order would. A pipe appears in someone's hand 2 bodies away. You see only the bowl first, a dark thumb of clay or wood cupped close against a coat. The owner looks toward the lantern, then toward the hatch, then toward the men nearby. His face carries the complicated innocence of a person preparing to do something everyone may hate. Tobacco is comfort. Smoke is smell. Flame is risk. Below deck, these facts sit in a very tight circle. A tinderbox comes out. Flint, steel, charred cloth. The little kit clicks once. Several heads turn. Nobody rises. That is warning enough. The man hesitates, then tucks the pipe away unlit with the sorrow of a philosopher denied a kingdom. The room relaxes by one notch. The rat resumes scraping behind the barrel, perhaps disappointed by the lack of drama. A small joke passes from the old sailor near you, barely voiced. He says the pipe may smoke after the ship does, if the fool is patient. The line is ugly, efficient and perfectly understood. A few breaths of laughter move under blankets, too low to disturb the lantern. The pipe owner says nothing. He has been corrected by community, which is usually cheaper than being corrected by flame. Your own hands creep toward the center of your body. You cup them under your arms, trapping what heat is left. The position folds you inward and presses the belt buckle into your stomach. Better than cold fingers. Nearly every comfort below deck charges a fee elsewhere. Warm hands, cramped belly. Dry chest, wet knee. Clearer air, colder face. Light, danger. Sleep, unreadiness. The galley, wherever its arrangement sits on this vessel, offers no open salvation now. Cooking heat is controlled, limited, and not placed for the benefit of shivering men sprawled under hammocks. On some ships, a brick-lined hearth or iron firebox helps contain the cook's fire. On others, arrangements vary by size, origin, and repair history. But even when heat exists aboard, it is not a household hearth. It is a working flame with rules around it. It cooks food, heats water when possible, and threatens catastrophe if treated like a tavern fire. You think of hot food and regret thinking of it. A warm bowl would change the night. Thick peas, even badly salted. Oatmeal. Broth from meat too old for poetry. Anything steaming enough to fog the face. The thought rises, then collapses because no such bowl is coming. The body files the dream under cruelty. The lantern keeper trims the flame with careful fingers. The wick lowers, then steadies. Less smoke, less light. Less risk. The room becomes darker at the edges. This should make sleep easier, but the darkness also removes the visible proof that fire remains contained. You trust the man because you must, because everyone must trust someone with something, even on a pirate ship. The cold continues its patient work. Your wet cuff has warmed slightly against your skin and now feels more unpleasant than sharp. The canvas across your knees holds a little stale heat. The rope coil has become a firm border between you and the next body. The lantern no longer seems like comfort. It seems like a bargain hanging from a hook. Fire is the wrong friend. It offers exactly what you need in the form most likely to take everything else. So you borrow warmth from poorer sources, armpits, breath, wool, another man's shoulder too near your own, the false memory of rum, the small trapped pocket under canvas. The lantern remains above it all, a guarded bead of danger and help, bright enough to show where the wet boards begin, too disciplined to rescue your hands. Your eyes close again. Behind the lids, the flame is still there, a yellow blur. The pipe stays unlit. The hatch draft thins. Someone turns beneath a blanket. The ship creaks, slow and damp, while every sleeping body trusts that the little flame will continue to behave better than the men who need it. The little flame behaves, and for a few breaths the room gives itself back to sleep. Then the hammock above you decides otherwise. It begins with one rope creaking higher than the rest. The sound tightens, releases, tightens again. You open one eye and see the dark belly of the hammock swing across the weak lantern glow. Its owner has shifted at the wrong moment, and now the cloth is moving not with the ship, but against it, a slow pendulum of poor decisions. A knee appears over the edge. Then disappears. Then appears again, more urgently. The man inside whispers a curse into the canvas. He is trying to turn over. That is all. A simple task on land. In a hammock at sea, it becomes a small engineering dispute between cloth, rope, gravity, pride, and the rolling hull. He lifts one shoulder. The ship drops. The hammock answers late. His weight slides. One elbow strikes the beam above with a dull wooden thump. Below him, two sleepers tighten their blankets over their heads without sympathy. Hammocks are clever because ships are unreasonable. A fixed bed fights the motion of the vessel, but a hammock moves with it, swinging as the hull rolls and easing some of the shove that would otherwise throw a sleeper from side to side. By the 17th and 18th centuries, hammocks were common in many maritime settings, especially because they saved space and could be stowed during the day. A whole sleeping arrangement could vanish upward into a lashed bundle when work required the deck or compartment clear. That is the official version. The lived version is the man overhead trying not to fall on your face. He grips the side of the hammock and pauses, breathing hard through his nose. The cloth has wrapped around his waist. One foot finds the air, the other foot remains trapped under his blanket. He has become a knot with opinions. The old sailor beside you, still apparently asleep, says, "Stop courting it." The hammock man freezes. A small ripple of breath moves around the compartment. Not laughter exactly, more like the room remembering it can still be entertained. Getting into a hammock takes timing. Getting out takes humility. Staying in takes practice. A newcomer may climb in too fast and roll straight over the far side. He may sit on the edge as if it were a bench and discover that the edge has no moral obligation to remain under him. He may put one knee in, then find himself sideways, with his backside exposed to the judgment of men who have been waiting all night for free amusement. The man above you is not new, but fatigue makes novices of everyone. He stops fighting the cloth and lets himself settle. The swinging slows. The hammock gives one last creak, like a comment it has chosen not to finish. You lie very still beneath it. A hammock overhead is comfort for one man and weather for another. If the sleeper drops a shoe, a cup, a knife, a pipe, a blanket corner, or himself, the person below becomes part of the experiment. Your own position beside the rope coil suddenly looks wiser. Hard things do not swing. Not unless the ship is in very serious trouble. The material record complicates the question of how neatly pirate vessels arranged hammocks, because piracy relied so often on captured ships, altered ships, and improvised crews. Naval ships might have clearer routines, numbers and places. Merchant vessels had their own habits. Pirates inherited, stole, adapted, overcrowded, and rearranged. Some crews may have had plenty of hammocks after taking a well-stocked prize. Others may have slept wherever cloth, beams, and argument allowed. A pirate ship is not one design. It is a history of seizures held together with rope. The hanging bodies create a second layer in the compartment. Men below are wedged among chests and coils. Men above sway under beams, their hammocks sagging like dark pods. The air moves differently around them. Drafts slip underneath. Heat gathers inside if the sleeper wraps well. A hammock raises a man off the dampest boards, away from trickles, boots, and the worst floor cold. It also exposes his back to moving air. Every improvement brings its own little tax. The hammock above you shifts again, gently now. The sleeper has found the angle. His breathing lengthens. The creak becomes regular, almost useful. Cloth pulls, rope answers, cloth relaxes, rope answers. After a while, the sound becomes less like a warning and more like a clock that cannot count. A man farther aft is not so fortunate. He tries to climb into an empty hammock after returning from some task above. He keeps one hand on the beam, lifts a knee, and waits for the ship to roll back. Sensible. Then the ship delays, because ships enjoy comedy. He commits too early. The hammock swings away from his weight. His free foot skids on the boards. He catches himself by grabbing the nearest hanging cloth, which belongs to someone else. The someone else wakes with a short, murderous whisper. The climber lets go at once and drops to both feet. For a moment he stands in the gloom, breathing hard, pretending this was an inspection. Nobody believes him. Nobody says so. The room allows dignity to survive by not naming its injuries. A lesser-known thing about hammocks is their double life. Rolled and lashed during the day, they could store bedding and clear space. In some naval contexts, rolled hammocks were also placed in nettings along the ship's sides, where they could offer a little protection against splinters or boarding. Bed by night, bundle by day, crude defence when fighting comes. It is a strange career for a piece of cloth. Most mattresses ashore never have to consider being shot at, which is one of their quieter virtues. The empty hammock waits. The climber tries again, slower. This time he sits into the cloth rather than onto it. He pulls one edge high before lifting the second leg. The ship rolls. He lets the hammock take the roll instead of correcting against it. Better. His body lowers into the sag. He turns, tucks his blanket, and vanishes into the fold with only a boot heel showing. The old sailor beside you gives one tiny grunt. Approval, perhaps, or the end of patience. Your own stomach rolls faintly with the motion overhead. Even without seeing the horizon, the body feels the vessels rise and drop. Some men find hammocks easier on the stomach because they move with the ship. Others find the swinging worse, a private sea inside the larger one. Seasickness does not care for theory. It chooses victims with a freedom pirates might admire. The hammock ropes rub at their fastenings. The beams take the weight. The whole low compartment becomes a rigging of sleep, a second ship inside the ship, where men hang from lines while the hull carries them through black water. It is ingenious and absurd. It is also the best answer many of them have. A cold draught slides under the nearest row of hammocks and reaches your knees. The hanging cloth stirs as if the sleepers are sails catching a wind too small to move the vessel. You pull the canvas closer. The rope coil holds you low. Above, the hammock man's breathing deepens. Below, your hip aches where the rope has not forgotten you. There are levels of discomfort here, arranged like decks, swinging, wedged, raised, damp, claimed, borrowed. Sleep chooses among them without asking which is fair. The lantern flickers once against the hornpane. The hammocks answer with their fate ropes and cloth. Your eyes close again, not because the room is still, but because it never will be. The ship moves. The beds move. The men move inside them. And somewhere between all those motions, a little sleep finds a place to hang. A little sleep finds a place to hang, and then water finds a better one. The drop lands on the back of your hand with such confidence that your eyes open at once. Not a splash. Not a leak worth shouting about. One cold bead, perfectly aimed, sliding between two knuckles and under the edge of your cuff. It carries the whole sea with it by suggestion. Your hand closes. Too late. The wet is already inside. You rub the spot against your coat. That spreads it. You tuck the hand under your arm. That traps it. You pull the cuff away from the skin. The cold air enters and makes the whole arrangement worse. A single drop has produced 3 bad choices in less than a minute, which is impressive work for water. Another drop forms above you, fattening on a beam seam or nail head, or some tiny path opened by spray and gravity. It shines in the lantern light. You watch it gather, tremble, hold, 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 then fall onto the canvas near your knee. It darkens the cloth in a round mark no larger than a coin. The mark begins spreading at the edges. The canvas, which has spent the night pretending to be shelter, remembers it is also cloth. Ships are built to keep water out, but out is a hopeful word at sea. Wooden hulls flex, seams work, hatches admit spray, decks leak at inconvenient edges, and every wet garment brought below becomes a private weather system. Shipwrights used caulking, often oakum driven into seams and sealed with pitch or tar, to help keep vessels watertight. It was skilled, necessary work. It was also never a permanent victory. The ocean does not lose arguments, it merely pauses to gather witnesses. The hammock above swings gently. Its owner sleeps through the drip because the water has chosen you first. This feels personal, though it is probably structural. The drop line runs just to one side of his hanging bed, falls past his blanket, and reaches your lower world with cruel precision. Rank, luck, and gravity are collaborating again. You slide your canvas 6 inches to the left. The rope coil blocks the movement. You lift your hip. The man beside you stirs. The canvas catches on a rough fibre of rope. You tug. The drop above falls again, this time onto the exposed top of your shoe. Not into it, on it. The distinction matters for one calm breath until the water runs along the leather crease and finds the place where the stitching has begun to fail. Your toe learns of this almost immediately. The written sources leave room for disagreement about how common severe cold water misery was aboard pirate ships, compared with ordinary merchant or naval vessels in the same waters. Pirates often sought warmer, profitable routes, but they also chased ships, fled pursuit, crossed seasons, and sailed along coasts where winter did not care about their preferences. Many surviving accounts favour capture, battle, punishment, or spectacle. They rarely pause to record the exact number of wet shoes under one dripping beam. Yet those shoes shape the night all the same. A man nearer the hull has woken to a worse problem. A thin run of water creeps along the boards beside his hip, following the ship's roll. He lifts his blanket, sees the shine, and makes a sound of deep, personal betrayal. The water slides beneath the corner of his bedding. He snatches it up too late. A dark patch blooms along the wool edge. He does not shout. Shouting would not dry it. Instead, he sits halfway up, folds the wet edge under, then unfolds it when he realizes he has put the damp side against his thigh. He mutters something about the ship's ancestry. The old sailor beside you answers without opening his eyes that the ship's mother was probably drier. This gets one small laugh from somewhere under a coat. The wet man does not laugh. He is busy changing geography. Wet cloth changes every claim below deck. A dry patch becomes a prize. A drip line becomes a fence. A blanket edge becomes a liability. The man with the chest lifts it onto a wedge of wood before the creeping water reaches the base. He does this quickly, with the tenderness other men reserve for babies or loaded pistols. A sea chest holds nearly all a sailor can keep private: clothing, tools, tobacco, perhaps letters, perhaps stolen things waiting for a safer port, perhaps nothing but the right to say, mine. Damp inside it can ruin a life in small, mouldy installments. You fold the wet canvas edge underneath itself. That puts the drier side against your knees. Not dry, drier. History often lives in comparative adjectives. Less wet, less cold, less likely to be stepped on, less close to the sick man, less impossible than the other choice. A lesser-known trick among sailors and travellers in hard weather is to turn damp layers so the wettest side faces outward, letting body heat work first on the less soaked layer against the skin. It is not comfortable. It is not modern outdoor wisdom with clean labels and clever seams. It is just handling cloth with a tired brain, and the knowledge that wet next to skin steals heat faster than pride can replace it. You do it slowly. Your fingers are clumsy. The canvas resists being useful. Spray comes down the hatch when someone opens it above. A pale scatter of droplets crosses the ladder and falls onto the boards near the entrance. Men nearest the hatch curse softly and turn their faces away. The hatch closes again, leaving cleaner air behind for half a breath and new wetness for the rest of the watch. The ship is generous in ways no one requested. Salt makes the wet worse. Fresh water would be bad enough, but salt water stiffens fabric, keeps dampness lingering, and leaves crystals that scratch when the cloth dries. Your sleeve already has pale lines at the cuff. The canvas has a salty roughness that rubs through your coat. The leather at your shoe crease darkens. A faint crust near your trouser knee cracks when you move. The hammock sleeper above finally wakes when a drop finds his shoulder. He jerks, grips the hammock side, and sets the whole thing swaying. His heel swings close to your face. You lean back. The rope coil catches your spine. He presses a palm over the wet spot on his blanket as if he can frighten it into retreat. After a moment, he turns the whole blanket around inside the hammock, a complicated operation involving elbows, knees, rope, and one whispered insult addressed to the sea personally. Nobody entirely agrees on whether sailors' common remedies for cold, wet clothing were consistently effective or simply better than surrender. Grease, tarred coverings, extra layers, oilcloth when available, turned garments, shared heat, and relentless wringing all appear in different maritime worlds. Some helped briefly. Some mostly gave men a task, which is sometimes its own medicine. Doing something can feel warmer than lying still and being defeated by a drip. You press the wet cuff outside the fold of your sleeve so it touches air rather than skin. This leaves your wrist exposed for a moment. The cold bites. You tuck the wrist back, badly, and trap the cuff between coat and canvas. Not ideal. Good enough to stop thinking for a few breaths. The creeping water on the boards turns with the ship's motion and runs away from your hip. Relief comes too quickly. Then the ship rolls back, and the shine returns along a slightly different path. Water does not respect previous boundaries. It redraws them with each movement. Men lift bundles, shift boots, pull blanket corners clear, adjust chests and move by inches. Below deck becomes a slow, sleeping evacuation from small rivers. Your own place shrinks again. The rope coil, once a punishment, becomes higher ground. You lean more of your weight into it and accept the ridge against your ribs. The man beside you does the same from his side. The coil sits between you like a disputed island. Neither of you speaks. Both of you know exactly what is happening. A final drop lands near your cheek, close enough that you hear it before you feel it. It strikes the boards with a soft tick and breaks into smaller beads. One touches your sleeve. One vanishes under the rope. One rests on the wood, clear and round in the lantern light. Such a tiny thing. Such an accomplished thief. You close your eyes but keep one hand on the canvas edge, ready to pull if the wet line shifts again. The ship moves. The drip waits. Your shoe darkens slowly at the seam, and the night, which already had wind, cold, bad air, false warmth and swinging beds, adds water in the dark, as if completing a very thorough inventory. The inventory of discomfort is not distributed evenly. That becomes clear when the wet line reaches your side of the rope coil and stops short of the man who has somehow found a raised plank with his boots tucked under him. He is asleep. Of course he is. The water has chosen you, not him, and this is how rank sometimes begins. One man is dry because he arrived earlier, another because he is useful, another because everyone knows better than to make him move, and another because luck has no shame. You shift your foot away from the darkening seam. The motion costs you space. Your knee presses against the man beside you. He presses back. Not hard, not yet. A small border dispute fought through wool and bone. You yield half an inch because your wet shoe is the larger enemy, and because he has the old sailor's advantage of seeming asleep while enforcing property. Across the compartment, The man with the good blanket lies near his chest, raised just enough above the damp boards to appear prosperous. The lantern gives a weak line along his cheek. He has one hand on the blanket, one foot braced against the chest, and both shoes tucked safely under the fold. To remove shoes in this room requires confidence. You still wear yours because you cannot trust the dark, the water, or the moral imagination of tired men. Pirate crews are often described as more egalitarian than naval or merchant ships, and there is truth in that. Many had articles that set shares of plunder, compensation for injury, and procedures for certain decisions. Captains could be elected or removed by the crew in some circumstances. Quartermasters could hold real power. Compared with harsh naval discipline, such arrangements could be striking. Yet equality at sea is never absolute, when one man has a dry corner and another has a dripping cuff. The quartermaster's shape moves near the stern, partly hidden by hammocks. You know him by how space opens before him. Not dramatically, no one leaps aside, but elbows draw in, a boot shifts, a blanket edge is pulled clear. His authority is not ornamental. He knows stores, shares, complaints, punishments, and who has been pretending that captured cloth was personal before anyone counted it. On a freezing night, that knowledge can matter more than a sword. He bends over a bundle near the stores and speaks to the owner in a low voice. The owner protests softly, too softly. The quartermaster lifts the top layer, finds something beneath it, perhaps extra cloth, perhaps a blanket end, perhaps only enough evidence to make lying expensive. The bundle is retied. A piece of cloth changes hands. No shouting. The room absorbs the correction. Nobody entirely agrees on whether pirate society should be called radically democratic, or merely a rougher, more practical alternative to the maritime labour systems around it. The answer depends on what you measure: voting, pay shares, discipline, race, forced service, skill, violence, access to food, or the right not to sleep in a wet gutter beside a rope coil. Tonight, democracy seems to have stopped at the edge of the better blanket. The captain, if he sleeps at all, is not here, among the worst of the elbows. A small cabin or separated space aft may belong to him, depending on the vessel. It may be cramped, damp and cold by any sane land standard, but a door changes everything. A door is not just wood. It is fewer boots near the ribs. It is a chest that can remain where it was placed. It is a blanket that does not need a fist around it all night. It is perhaps one whole minute of privacy before someone knocks with bad news. You imagine that cabin and immediately dislike yourself for it. Envy is warmer than dignity, but less useful. The captain's place comes with other debts: decisions in chase, danger in battle, blame when food runs low, the crew's eye when luck fails. Still, he is probably not lying with a wet shoe beside a rat's workplace, and that fact has a way of arranging your sympathies. Skill buys comfort too. The carpenter's mate sleeps near his wrapped tools, and the tools have better covering than your knees. The bundle is oiled cloth, tied twice, raised from the boards. Fair enough. Lose a blanket and one man suffers. Lose the caulking irons, augers, mallet or saws at the wrong time, and the ship herself begins asking questions through leaks. A vessel is a cold judge of priorities. It protects what keeps it alive. The navigator, or pilot, when there is one aboard worth the name, receives a different sort of regard. Charts, instruments, local knowledge, and the ability to read coast, current, depth, and sky can make a man irritatingly valuable. He may not look stronger than you. He may cough, snore, cheat at dice, and wear stockings with holes. But he knows where the ship is when the sea pretends all directions are the same. That can earn a drier berth than muscle alone. A prisoner forward shifts against a coil of spare line. You see him now because the lantern swings. He lies closer to the guarded stores than comfort would choose, watched by two men who seem asleep in the way traps seem harmless. Captured sailors, passengers or specialists might be held, recruited, ransomed, forced to work or released, depending on usefulness and circumstance. A surgeon might be treated carefully. A carpenter might be persuaded with better terms. A passenger with ransom value might be guarded. A common hand with no skill the crew needs may sleep wherever control is easiest. The prisoner's blanket is thin. His hands are not tied at the moment, but his space is. A boot from one guard rests near his thigh. Another guard's arm lies across the path to the hatch. That is enough. Barriers do not always need rope. Sometimes they wear shoes. A small, peculiar sign of hierarchy sits beside the chest sleeper, a tin cup placed where no one kicks it. Not hidden, not guarded, simply placed. That cup's safety tells a whole story. Your cup, if you had one loose, would need to be under your elbow, inside a bundle, or tied by string. His sits in the open, enjoying social protection. It is almost offensive, a little metal lord beside a woolen kingdom. The wet on the boards slides nearer and then away again. You adjust your shoe, lifting the toe onto the rope coil's lowest turn. The old sailor's eye opens at once. Your toe is on common territory, or perhaps his territory, which is more dangerous. You lower it slowly. The eye closes. The law has spoken. Rank below deck is not a ladder so much as a set of tiny permissions. Who may stretch a leg? Who may keep a chest near the dry side? Who may sleep through a call? Who may be woken by name instead of a shove? Who may leave a cup exposed? Who may complain about the hatch and be heard rather than mocked? Who may smell of better tobacco? Who may own 2 blankets and call one spare? You own a damp cuff, 1 canvas scrap, shoes you dare not remove, and the hope that your bundle under your arm has not absorbed too much water. That is not nothing, not on this deck. A man near the hatch has less, a cap, a coat with one sleeve torn near the wrist, and a position so draughty that his nose has become the room's weather vane. He turns from the hatch and catches your eye. For a moment, the two of you share the comfort of knowing someone else is also badly placed. Then the quartermaster's voice comes again, low but clear. A name is called, not yours. A man with some standing rises from his raised place, taking his blanket with him under one arm. He has been summoned above. His dry hollow remains behind, pressed into cloth, still holding the shape of his body. Every eye nearby understands. No one moves until his boots climb the ladder. Then the room rearranges itself in silence. A knee slides. A blanket corner advances. The man near the hatch shifts toward the abandoned warmth. The old sailor beside you moves 1 foot before anyone else can claim that plank. You try to draw your own shoulder closer to the dry patch, but a hand from the dark presses gently against your sleeve. Not angry. Final. The hollow fills by degrees with men of better claim, better timing, or better nerve. The warmth vanishes under them before it can reach you. You settle back against the rope coil, your toe again near the wet seam, while above the summoned man's steps cross the deck into the wind. Down here, rank has not needed a speech. It has spoken through a cup, a blanket, a boot, a door you cannot see, and the half-inch you are not allowed to take. The half-inch you are not allowed to take keeps its shape in your mind after the hand withdraws. You stay where you are, cheek turned toward your sleeve, wet cuff trapped badly against your wrist, toe close to the seam where water comes and goes with the roll. The room settles from its silent rearrangement. The dry hollow has been swallowed by men with better claims. The quartermaster's voice fades above. Then the cough begins again. It comes from forward, near the guarded prisoner at first, or perhaps beyond him. In this light, illness has no clear address. 1 rough scrape, then a pause, then 2 harder coughs pressed into cloth. Several bodies tighten. No one speaks. The room has already spent its generosity on blankets, air and stolen inches. There is not much left for lungs. The sick man turns his face away from the nearest bodies. That is a courtesy, and like many courtesies aboard ship, it is incomplete but appreciated. His blanket lifts and falls unevenly. The lantern glow catches the edge of his nose, the pale line of one cheek, the fingers curled against his chest. He is not old, not young either. The sea has made his age difficult to read, as it does with many men who sleep in salt and wake to rope. Illness is not an interruption aboard a ship. It is part of the voyage. Men live close, work wet, sleep badly, share cups, share air, and carry small injuries until they become larger ones. In the age of sail, crews faced fevers, coughs, stomach complaints, skin infections, scurvy, frost-nipped fingers, toothache, lice, old wounds, and the 1,000 ordinary ways a body can object to hard labour and poor rest. Pirates are outside the law, they are not outside the body. The coffer swallows. The sound is dry and painful even across the compartment. A hand near him offers a cup, nudging it along the boards rather than sitting up. Water, perhaps, or thin drink gone cold. The sick man takes it with both hands, drinks once, and holds the cup too long. Shared cups are efficient. Shared cups are unwise. Efficiency wins almost every vote below deck. Experts remain cautious about claiming whether pirate crews had consistently better access to surgeons than ordinary merchant crews. Some pirates forced surgeons from captured vessels to join them. Some offered shares or protection. Some sailed with a medical man who knew useful treatments, painful treatments, and several confident mistakes. Others had no proper surgeon at all, only a chest of remedies, a few tools, and the opinions of men who had survived things and therefore considered themselves qualified. A surgeon, if aboard, might be sleeping somewhere with his chest close, because the chest matters almost as much as the man. Bandages, salves, lancets, needles, medicines, perhaps instruments for teeth or wounds, perhaps vinegar or spirits for cleaning, perhaps herbs whose reputation exceeds their performance. In the dark, the thought of that chest gives comfort out of proportion to certainty. It is nice to imagine that someone owns answers, even if those answers sometimes cut, bleed, sting, or fail. The sick man coughs again, and this time a nearby sleeper snaps. "Turn away." He has already turned away. Everyone knows it. The words are not instruction so much as fear wearing irritation. The sick man shifts another inch, which brings his shoulder nearer the prisoner's guard. The guard pushes him back with one foot, not hard, but without tenderness. Space is medicine too, and there is none to prescribe. Your own throat answers with a tickle. This is unfair. A cough heard in the dark can teach the body imitation. You swallow, slow and careful, and keep your mouth closed. The air tastes of damp wood, rum traces, old breath, and something sharper now. Vinegar, perhaps. Someone has dabbed it on cloth or spilled it earlier near a chest. Vinegar appears often in maritime life as food, cleaner, preservative, and rough household remedy. Its sharpness cuts through the bilge smell for a moment, then fades as if defeated by numbers. A man above in a hammock scratches under his collar. The sound is tiny, fast, and intimate. Then another scratch comes from nearer the stern. Lice do not respect rank, though they may appreciate better bedding. Clothing worn for days, crowded sleeping, limited washing, and shared cloth give them a fine republic. A pirate crew may quarrel over democracy, but lice practice it thoroughly. You feel an itch at your own neck the instant you think of them. Thought is also contagious. One lesser-known routine of seafaring life is the careful inspection of seams, cuffs, collars and shirt folds for lice and nits when light and time allow. Men pick at clothing, shake garments, heat cloth if they can, change linen if they possess spare linen, and scratch in private when they possess none. Below deck at this hour there is no proper campaign. Only fingers under collars, a shoulder rubbed against cloth, a cap lifted and replaced. The itch becomes another sound the room pretends not to hear. The sick man has begun worrying at a small pouch. His fingers fumble with the cord. A man beside him helps by pulling it open, then immediately withdraws his hand, as though kindness has a strict distance. The sick man pinches something dark from inside, tobacco perhaps, or a dried herb, or a lump of some shipboard comfort too old to name safely. He presses it into his cheek instead of lighting it. No flame, no smoke, just a taste to occupy pain. The lantern shows his fingertips, red around the knuckles, pale at the ends. Not black, not ruined, but cold-worn and cracked. Men handling wet rope in freezing weather can damage skin quickly. Fingers split, nails tear. Numbness hides injury until warmth returns with its cruel little bells. He rubs thumb against forefinger as if checking whether the hand still belongs to him. You do the same under your canvas, privately. Your hand answers. Slowly, but it answers. Another man near the tool bundle wakes enough to ask whether the sick one has fever. Nobody answers at once. Fever is difficult in this room. Every face is flushed or pale by turns. Every body is either sweating under cloth or shivering through it. A hand finally touches the sick man's forehead. The gesture is brief. The hand comes away and hesitates, which is worse than an answer. Then the older sailor says he is warm, but not cooking. This is accepted as medical language for now. A small cloth is passed forward, not a whole blanket. Nobody has become saintly, just a folded rag, damp at one corner, cleaner than some. The sick man presses it to his mouth when the next cough comes. That little barrier changes very little, and still changes something. It lets the men near him believe a boundary exists. Belief can calm a room, even when it cannot clean the air. The prisoner watches this from his guarded strip of floor. His eyes follow the cloth, the cup, the pouch, the hand on the forehead. His own blanket is thin, but he says nothing. Sickness alters rank for a moment, though not enough to free him. A coughing guard would be helped before a healthy captive. A surgeon prisoner might be treated like treasure. A useless sick captive might become a problem no one wants to name. The room does not solve these questions. It breathes around them. The sick man's breathing settles after the cloth, rough but quieter. The bodies nearby loosen by degrees. The guard's foot returns to its place. The cup is drawn back, wiped on a sleeve with great optimism, and passed to someone else. You decide not to think about that. Thinking about cups leads to thinking about mouths, and thinking about mouths leads to thinking about every breath in the room. Sleep cannot survive that much knowledge. The itch at your neck remains. You do not scratch at first. Scratching admits the possibility. Then the itch sharpens and dignity leaves. You slip 2 fingers under the collar and rub once, quickly. Relief. Shame. More itch. The old sailor beside you gives no sign he has noticed, which may be kindness or sleep. The wet seam near your foot has withdrawn again. The coffer lies still. The lantern burns small. The rat has stopped scraping, perhaps listening like everyone else. For a short while, the room is organised around one man's lungs, one rag, one shared cup, and the careful distance no one has space to keep. You lower your head. Your throat is still rough, but no cough comes. The damp cuff warms against your wrist. Your fingers stay tucked close. Around you, illness does not leave. It only becomes quieter, settling beside the sleepers like another bundle in the dark, present, guarded, and impossible to move far enough away. Impossible to move far enough away is how most things live below deck. Sickness, damp, rank, bad air, another man's elbow, the old sailor's boot, the rat behind the barrel. They remain in place until the ship or the watch or morning tells them otherwise. For now, nothing tells them otherwise. So the room returns, slowly, to its ordinary noise. Ordinary is not the same as quiet. The hull gives a long, low creak as the ship climbs a swell and settles down the other side. A barrel knocks once against its wedge. A hammock rope tightens overhead and answers with a thin complaint. Water taps somewhere above, waits, then taps again. The sick man's breath roughens but does not break into another cough. The lantern chain ticks when the flame shifts inside its horn pane. Behind the stores, the rat resumes work with professional confidence. At first, every sound keeps you awake because every sound might mean trouble. A changed sail, a loose line, a shifting barrel, a leak finding a new path, a man moving where he should not, a watchman calling down too softly. The body listens too hard because the night has trained it badly. You lie with your cheek on your sleeve, eyes closed, and let each noise present itself like a small accusation. Then the noises begin to sort themselves. That creak belongs to the hull working with the swell. That knock belongs to the same barrel as before. That rope sound belongs to the hammock above, not a line parting on deck. The wet tick is still the drip near the beam, not a new leak over your chest. The rat is only the rat, which is an unflattering comfort, but a comfort all the same. The ship speaks in repeated phrases. You begin to recognize which ones are complaints and which are warnings. Experienced sailors learn the sounds of their vessels because sound could reveal danger before sight did. A pump worked too often, a sail flogging wrong, a sudden silence in the wind, a new groan under strain, cargo shifting, water where water should not be. These things mattered. On the other hand, the normal groans, knocks, rope rubs, block clacks and hull sounds became part of sleep. A living ship is noisy. A strangely silent one might be worse. Interpretations continue to differ over whether sailors became genuinely accustomed to sleeping through shipboard noise or whether exhaustion simply conquered their objections night after night. No one in this compartment is collecting neat evidence. The answer lies in the way the old sailor beside you opens one eye at a changed footstep above, then closes it when the rhythm returns to normal. He does not sleep through everything. He sleeps through what has earned the right to be ignored. A foot crosses the deck overhead. Slow, braced, careful. Not alarm. The body below hears that and loosens. Another foot follows, then a scrape, then the thud of something set down rather than dropped. The watch is working but not panicking. That difference matters. Even half asleep, men listen to the quality of other men's movements. Panic has a tempo. So does competence. A short call comes from forward, blurred by wind and wood. Another voice answers. The words are lost, but the tone is not. Routine. Cold routine, irritated routine, but routine. The hammock above you swings once as its occupant shifts away from the old drip. He mumbles something that might be a prayer, a curse, or an instruction to his blanket. The room accepts all three possibilities. Pirate crews, like other maritime crews, depended on repeated calls, gestures, and shared habits. Many men aboard such vessels had served on merchant or naval ships before turning pirate, or being drawn into piracy. They knew commands, sail handling, watch rhythms, deck work, and the compressed language of shipboard labour. A vessel cannot be run by theatrical menace. It runs on men recognizing what must be done before a sentence has finished. That is why the voices above can soothe you without meaning to. They say enough, not too much. A true alarm would cut differently through the boards. It would sharpen the room. Men would rise, curse, grab belts, reach for weapons or lines, shove toward the hatch. Instead, bodies remain curled under cloth. A man scratches, another swallows. The old sailor's boot nudges your toe by accident and stays there, warm at the edge. You consider moving away, then decide not to reject civilization in one of its rare forms. The rat behind the barrel grows bolder. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. Something dry is being tested by small teeth. Biscuit, perhaps. Rope fibre. Wood. A scrap of packing. Rats and mice were common unwelcome passengers aboard ships, thriving where food, warmth, and hiding places existed. Crews used cats, traps, careful storage, and violence of opportunity, with uneven success. Tonight the rat sounds better supplied than several men present, which feels like poor management. Someone near the stern clicks his tongue in sleep. The rat stops. The tongue clicks again. The rat resumes, more softly. Even vermin understand that rhythm can be dangerous. The noises grow layered now. Hull below, rigging above, breath nearby. Cloth close against your ear. A far block knocking at irregular intervals. Water outside slapping the hull with a flat palm. The lantern ticking. The rat. The sick man. Your own swallow. Your own sleeve crackling faintly when you shift your wrist. Each one has a place. Each one occupies a narrow shelf in the mind. Once shelved, it no longer needs to be held. A strange comfort comes from the ugliness of it. None of these sounds is tender, none is made for sleep. But they are known. They prove the ship remains itself. The same barrel remains wedged, the same hammock remains tied, the same lantern remains guarded. The same men remain badly arranged in the same low room, not washed away, not called to battle, not yet thrown into mourning. A whisper passes behind you, not addressed to anyone, perhaps not even awake. A name, maybe a woman's name, maybe a port, maybe only the end of a dream spoken into wool. No one mocks it. Some sounds are granted amnesty at this hour. The sea has taken enough privacy already. Another man mutters numbers, shares perhaps, a debt, a heading, a childhood prayer broken into arithmetic. Pirate crews could be mixed communities, drawing sailors from many places and backgrounds, and shipboard language often carried traces of port, empire, forced labour, trade, and old service. In sleep, the public voice loosens. Men speak in fragments the day might not invite. The room hears and forgets, which is one of its better manners. Your breathing begins to borrow from the ship. Not neatly, no soft rhythm fit for a song. In with the hulls rise, out with the hammocks creak. In with water under the boards, out with the lanterns tick. The pattern breaks, returns, breaks again. That is enough. A sleeping body does not require music. It requires permission to stop checking every sound for disaster. The sick man shifts and gives one small cough into the cloth. Several sleepers stir, but no one fully wakes. The cough remains inside the room's new order. The rat scrapes once more and stops. Above, the sail changes note, and this time the watch answers with a calm call before fear can climb down the hatch. The old sailor does not open his eye. You keep yours closed. The wet cuff is still there, the rope bridge is still there. The forbidden half-inch of dry plank is still forbidden. Nothing has been solved. But the sounds have become a net rather than a series of hooks. They hold the dark in place. They hold you in it. The ship groans, knocks, breathes, drips, creaks, and carries every one of you forward, while the thousand noises that kept you awake begin, unfairly and slowly, to make sleep possible. Sleep becomes possible just long enough for morning to interrupt it. At first the change is not light, it is movement. A harder foot crosses the deck above, then another. A voice cuts down through the boards, sharper than the night voices, carrying the rough edge of command. The old sailor's eye opens before the words are clear. The sick man stirs. The hammock above you gives a startled creak as its owner's body tightens inside the cloth. Then the hatch cover shifts, and dawn enters as a pale square. Not golden, not kind. Grey light, thin and cold, spilling down the ladder and showing the compartment as it really is. Low beams, wet boards, sagging hammocks, blanket humps, chests on wedges, rope coils, scattered cups, one dark run of water along a seam, faces creased by bad sleep. Night hid some of the insult. Dawn has fewer manners. A shout comes down. Men begin collecting themselves before they are fully awake. Hands go first, feeling for belts, knives, caps, shoes, bundles, blanket edges, whatever must not be left behind. The room that spent the dark hours becoming a nest now has to become part of a working ship again. It does so with resentment. A man sits up into a beam and folds down again without a word. Another tries to swing from his hammock, catches one foot in his blanket, and hangs for one breath in a shape no religion would approve. Two hands shove him upright before his heel reaches anyone's face. You push yourself up from beside the rope coil. The coil has printed itself into your hip so thoroughly that for a moment you seem to own an extra bone. Your wet cuff has gone stiff at the edge. Your shoe, the one that took water at the seam, feels cold all through the toe. When you stand, the foot answers with a dull ache, then a needling rush of returning feeling. Morning is generous with sensation once it is too late to refuse. Ships in the sailing age began the day with work, not with reflection. Lines must be checked, sails must be handled, pumps may need attention, decks, gear, stores, and damage from the night must be inspected before small problems become expensive ones. A pirate ship may reject royal discipline and still obey this practical order, Canvas, rope, wood, and water do not care whether the men aboard are lawful. They care whether they are maintained. You reach for your canvas. It is under the rope coil, still there, though one corner has been stepped on hard enough to leave a dark print. The print may be from the man who borrowed your hollow. It may be from you. It may be from fate wearing shoes. There is no time for an inquiry. You shake the canvas once, fold it badly, and tuck it under your arm. The hatch ladder is crowded. Men climb in short bursts, each waiting for the boots above to clear. The air near the opening is cleaner and colder. The first breath of it cuts through the stale room and makes your eyes water. The second breath feels better, until it reaches your chest and discovers how tired you are. Behind you, the sick man coughs once into his cloth and rises more slowly. Someone tells him to keep moving. Someone else, maybe the same man, hands him his cap. That is the morning's kindness. Impatient, useful, already looking elsewhere. The deck receives you with a flat grey world. The sea is the colour of worn iron. Low cloud presses down. The moon has gone or faded into the same pallor as everything else. Frost edges the rigging. Ice clings to the leeward rail in hard little shelves. The lines shine where frozen spray has made them glassy. Blocks wear rims of white. The sailcloth above holds stiff patches that crackle when the wind shifts. A frozen ship can look beautiful for exactly the length of time before someone hands you work. A man forward is beating a line against the deck to loosen ice. Not wildly, not angrily, just rhythmically, with the tired concentration of a person persuading an object to return to its profession. Flecks jump from the rope and scatter across the planks. Another man works a wooden fid into a stiff knot. A third clears ice from around a belaying point with the back of a knife, careful not to cut what the ship will need later. Every frozen detail is also a task. Cold weather sailing required constant attention to ice on ropes, sails, blocks, rails, and deck fittings. Ice added weight, made gear harder to handle, and could turn footing treacherous. The more ice gathered aloft, the more dangerous the vessel could become. The deck's pale glitter is not decoration. It is a list of chores written in frozen salt. Archaeologists and historians do not entirely agree on how typical such ice-heavy pirate nights were, because surviving accounts often favour memorable extremes, while ordinary cold labour leaves fewer traces. A captain's capture may be recorded, a trial may preserve a dramatic storm, a newspaper may save a hardship, but the morning work of cracking ice from a line, flexing a sail, and coaxing fingers back into usefulness rarely receives a full paragraph. The deck under your boots supplies the missing one. The watch coming off duty looks hollowed out. Their faces are grey under salt and beard. One man holds his hands close to his chest, fingers curled like hooks, waiting for feeling to return. Another blinks too slowly. The man who relieved you earlier comes down from near the rail and passes without speaking, eyes already on the hatch below. He has earned the stale warmth you were eager to escape. The exchange has no ceremony. The ship spends men in turns. You step where others have scraped the ice rougher. The sole of your wet shoe slips once, then grips. Lesson remembered. A bucket passes from hand to hand. It is used to clear slush near a scupper, then passed back, then used again somewhere else. Morning work multiplies small tools: bucket, scraper, rope end, knife back, mallet, stiff fingers, breath. Nothing looks impressive. Everything matters. A lesser-known morning habit appears as men check themselves before the work fully takes hold. One cracks salt from his cuff by bending the cloth back and forth. Another turns a damp stocking top outward to keep the wettest edge off his skin. A third shakes frost from the inside of his cap and inspects it with disappointment, as if the cap has betrayed him personally. These gestures take seconds, but they are maintenance. Clothing is equipment. Skin is equipment. Both have survived the night in questionable condition. You rub your own cuff between thumb and finger. The stiff edge breaks into tiny grains. The skin beneath is red, sore, but whole. Good enough. That phrase moves through the morning without being spoken. Good enough to haul. Good enough to stand. good enough not to complain where a louder misery is available. The sick man emerges behind you. He looks worse in daylight, which seems unfair. Night had softened the face. Dawn shows the pale lips, the rubbed nose, the red cracks at his knuckles. He is given a lighter job near the rail, coiling a line already freed from ice. This may be mercy. It may be efficiency. A man coughing into a hauling crew can weaken the pull. A man coiling lines still contributes. On a ship, care and calculation often wear the same coat. The hammock man from above has a crease along his cheek where the cloth pressed into him. He touches it and winces. The old sailor notices and says nothing, which is either restraint or the last stage of mockery. A younger hand slips near the hatch, catches a stay, and freezes in place until balance returns. Only after he is steady does someone murmur that the deck has opinions this morning. A few tired smiles appear and vanish into collars. The rough arithmetic of the night is being counted now. Who slept? Who shivered? Who lost a dry corner? Who kept a blanket? Who woke coughing? Who came off watch with hands still working? Who hid drink? Who took another man's inch and got away with it? Who will be useful today, and who will need watching? No ledger is opened, but the crew reads one another with the accuracy of men who must share risk. A line is put into your hands. It is colder than your palms, but less dead than it was in the dark. You pull with the others. The rope resists, then moves. Above, a stiff patch of sail gives a rough crack as it loosens. Your shoulders object. Your hip remembers the rope coil. Your foot in the wet shoe stings with each brace. Still, the pull warms the fingers in a way rum never did. Painful heat. Honest heat. The night has not vanished. It has changed form. It is in the rope thawing under your grip, in the cough near the rail, in the salt breaking from your cuff, in the watchman's empty faces, in the canvas under your arm waiting to be stowed before someone tells you sharply that your bedding is not part of the rigging. Dawn has not rescued you. It has given you work sturdy enough to stand inside. The order comes to make the line fast. You hold while another man belays. The sail steadies. The ship leans, corrects, and takes the grey wind forward. Around you, men shake the last sleep from their limbs in short, practical movements, and the frozen night begins to melt into the deck one small, dangerous patch at a time. The frozen night melts into the deck, but not out of the men. It stays in shoulders, cuffs, shoes, lungs, and the slow way fingers close around rope. You stand with the line made fast, and your hands briefly empty, which feels almost suspicious. A ship does not usually leave hands empty unless it is preparing to put something worse in them. The grey wind fills the loosened sail. It no longer cracks as sharply now. The stiff patches have begun to soften under handling, motion, and the faint work of daylight. Ice drops from the rigging in small chips. One lands near your boot and skitters across the boards before vanishing into slush. Another strikes a coil of rope with a tiny click, as if the ship is counting its own thaw. Your canvas bundle is still under your arm. You remember it only when the quartermaster's eye finds it. Not your face. The bundle. That is enough. You tuck it quickly beside a chest near the companionway, out of the way, folded badly but not loose. Bedding by night, nuisance by morning. The same object changes rank with the hour. The deck is now fully awake. Not lively. Awake. There is a difference. Men move in short, economical paths. No one wastes steps on a surface that can betray a boot. The watch coming off duty descends toward the hatch, taking with them the sharp smell of frozen wool and salt beard. Those who slept badly now take their places above. The exchange is uneven, resentful, and necessary. This is how the ship survives. One man loses sleep so another can lose it later. Pirates are remembered for pursuit, plunder, violence, flags and trials, but the plain fact under all of it is seamanship. A crew that cannot manage sails, repair gear, steer through weather, keep watch, ration stores, and maintain order long enough to function will not remain dangerous for long. The sea does not reward a reputation. It rewards competence, and sometimes not even that. You feel competence around you in small corrections. The old sailor shifts your hand half a span along the rope without looking at you. A younger man sees it and copies the placement. The sick man near the rail coils slowly, keeping his cough inside his cloth. The carpenter's mate checks a fitting where ice has cracked away from the wood. The helmsman watches the set of the sail rather than the men. Nobody explains the whole system. The system is carried in hands. The morning's work begins to make heat, honestly. Not the pretty heat imagined from a lantern, not the lying heat of rum, not the stale pocket under damp canvas. This heat comes from pulling, bracing, lifting, scraping, holding, and moving again. It hurts at first. Feeling returns to the fingers with needle points. Your wet shoe warms from the inside just enough to become more uncomfortable. Your hip, marked by the rope coil, complains whenever you lean. Still, this is better than lying still and being slowly conquered by a drip. A small odd practice passes along the rail. Men slap rope-wet hands against sleeves, thighs, or the sides of their coats, not for drama, but to wake the skin. One rubs a bit of grease into cracked knuckles from a twist of cloth, guarding the skin against salt and splitting. Another bends his cuff until the frozen crust breaks, then brushes the grains away with the seriousness of a man cleaning a valuable tool. Skin is a tool here, so is cloth, so is patience, though patience is in short supply. Specialists still hesitate over whether pirate crews were, in practice, more forgiving of weakened shipmates than naval or merchant crews, because the surviving evidence shows both mutual obligation and brutal calculation. Some articles promised compensation for injury. Some crews valued skill enough to preserve a sick or wounded man. Some situations allowed no gentleness at all. On this deck, the question is answered in half measures. The coughing man is not thrown aside. He is also not excused from usefulness. That may be the truest shape of care aboard. Find the work a weakened man can still do, and do not make poetry out of it. The quartermaster passes again, counting without moving his lips. Men, lines, canvas, damage, stores, mood. A ship's morning is an audit conducted by weather. Who is fit? What is wet? What has shifted? Which rope runs? Which sail needs attention? Which man looks likely to drop something important because his eyes have not come back from the night? Sleep, or the lack of it, becomes visible in posture. You look toward the hatch. Below, the low compartment waits with its bad air, wet boards, hammocks, chests, guarded blankets, hidden bottle, rat, lantern, and the small rag hanging in the draught. It already feels distant, though your body still carries it. The cuff, the shoe, the ache, the smell tucked into the coat. Tonight, if the cold holds and the wind keeps its temper, the same space will receive men again. They will fight for inches. They will tuck canvas under thighs. They will trust knots above their faces. They will dislike the lantern and need it. They will listen to coughs and pretend not to fear them. They will sleep anyway. That is the strange human gift left after romance has been scraped from the planks. Not bravery in the loud sense, not the tavern version of pirate life with raised cups and impossible hats. A quieter talent. The ability to sleep where the body should object too strongly. To take a coil of rope and make it almost a pillow. To treat a damp canvas scrap as shelter. To learn which creaks matter. To guard a blanket edge without waking fully. To stand watch when the blood feels slow, and then lie down beside a man whose name you may not like because his shoulder blocks the draught. You take the next line when it comes. The rope now moves cleaner through your hands. Ice breaks from it in thin flakes. The sail above settles into a steadier pull. Around you, the men do not look like legends. They look used, capable, irritated, hungry, half sick, half frozen, and alive. Much closer to history that way. The sea lifts the ship and lowers it. The motion is large enough to rule everyone, familiar enough to be ignored for a breath. Somewhere forward, the lookout wipes his nose on his sleeve and resumes staring into grey distance. Near the rail, The coughing man finishes his coil and rests one hand on it, as if the rope might steady him in return. The old sailor notices, says nothing, and nudges another loose line toward him. A smaller task. Still a task. The ship continues because enough small tasks are done. Your hands are warm now. In the rough way hands get warm from work. The pain has moved behind the knuckles. Your breathing has deepened. The wet cuff no longer feels like a crisis, only a fact. Even the cold has become less of an enemy, and more of a rule written across everything. Wood, rope, cloth, skin, breath, sail. You do not defeat it. You arrange yourself inside it. For one brief moment, nothing is asked of you. The line is secure. The sail holds. The deck under your boots is still treacherous but known. You tuck your hands beneath your arms and stand with the others, looking not at adventure, not at glory, but at the pale working morning after a night that allowed just enough sleep to keep men upright. The ship leans, steadies, and moves on. The work eases by degrees, and the morning stops feeling like a punishment. It becomes only morning. Grey water, wet boards, a rope lying quieter than before, a cap pulled low, a sleeve drying badly in the wind. The men speak less now. Their voices are lower, softened by tired throats and by the simple fact that the worst hour has passed. Let the deck grow less sharp in your mind. Let the frozen ropes become lines again, not threats. Let the lantern below shrink to a small yellow memory, guarded and harmless now. The cough, the drip, the rat behind the barrel, the creak of hammocks, the cold hand on your shoulder calling you to watch, all of it settles into one long murmur, held inside the wooden body of the ship. Your wet cuff is only cloth. Your sore hip is only a bruise. The canvas waits below with the faint shape of a body folded into it. The sea keeps lifting and lowering the hull, lifting and lowering, as steady as breathing once you stop trying to count it. You can leave the crew to their ropes and weather. You can leave the grey sail to take the wind. The ship carries its stolen blankets, its bad air, its guarded flame, its aching hands, and its small scraps of sleep, forward into the day. Rest now. The night has passed. The cold has softened at the edges. The ship goes on without needing anything more from you. Sweet dreams.